Good evening, and welcome to Outside of the Grid, a podcast by Brad Barfield and Donald Hensley, where we have extraordinary conversation with so-called ordinary people that you meet driving down the street or in the stores, but you don't know their backstory until you learn it here, way out here, outside of the grid. Welcome to the show.
Hello, Will Cassity. You there?
I'm here.
Hey, I also have O'Donnell on the line with us. You guys have met up there at your place of business.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, Will. Yeah, I've
Hey,
done it before, man. How's everything going, bro?
Oh, pretty good. Trying to stay out of trouble.
Good. Oh,
I'm
good luck
looking
with that,
for I
man.
keep paying these bills.
How's that staying out of trouble working for you, Will? You hear me, Will? How's that staying out of trouble working for you?
I had some technical difficulties there. I was trying to switch over to my headset here.
Yeah, I know. My goal for the day is to call everybody at the most inconvenient time that I can call. That's my goal today.
Well, I just got off work, and I'll tell you.
So far, it's at 100, right? I said,
Yep.
so far, it's at 100, right?
Hey, he's doing an excellent job.
Well, I mean, you know, it's like I said, we're trying to do like quick little 20-minute things. And, you know, there's only so much you can do in 20 minutes. But then again, I mean, you can throw out a lot of a line in 20 minutes. You may not can reel it all back in, but you can get it laid out there and then come back and answer it later, you know. And, you know, you and I just had like a 4-hour conversation back in December. It was before 2020. We were still under that 2021 vibe. And I was just, I just want to follow up with you. Really what we were trying to do is just, learn the art of letting other people explain things to us without trying to lead them in the wrong or different directions than what they're going. So I just want to see where your brain's at lately. I mean, I've already expressed before that I think you're an interesting guy. And Donald, he understands. I kind of explained some of the backstory, told him that you lived all over the place and, and wound up back here and we're an entrepreneur and business owner. And, but you had some unique ideas on things, specifically of philosophy. So I'm going to be quiet for a minute and just let you just kind of start where you want to start and tell us a few minutes. And then if we have questions, we'll kind of intercede in. But we'll let you have about 4, 5, 6, 7 minutes to just kind of talk about things.
Well, you asked, I guess I was hungry when you asked me the question to talk about what I wanted to talk about, and the only thing I could keep thinking of was hamburgers. And one of the questions I remember, it's just interesting to me, growing up poor, my mom, she was on food stamps, she was a single mom, her and my dad split up when I was 2, and I just remember us struggling to survive, but I can never remember a day that I ever went hungry. She was working 2 jobs over in Lake Village. She was working the cafeteria at the school, at the elementary school. No special privileges or nothing. I thought maybe I'd get some free cupcakes or something out of it. I didn't get anything like that. And then she worked like at the nursing home as a nurse's aide in the evenings. And then she got to where she couldn't work them both, and she ended up having to let go of one of the jobs. And then she married my stepdad, which kind of changed everything. It went good. During all that time, I can remember we always had hamburger. We had hamburger. She'd make hamburger steaks or make hamburgers with them, or meatloaf. And that led me to a question. Does you can put breadcrumbs in meatloaf, right? But does oatmeal
a lot of people put crackers. Does oatmeal belong in meatloaf?
Does oatmeal, because my wife was trying to tell me, she says, well, one of the ways that you make your meat go further is putting oatmeal in it, and it will absorb the flavor of the meat and the fat, especially if you get like the 73%, and it will absorb some of that fat, and yet it will actually taste more like meat than it will bread or grain. And I was like, my mother, she never had to do a trick like that. But I can see a lot of families having to do that now. I mean, they cow, it acts like they got gold in them, don't they? You know? So,
yeah, everybody's had to try to stretch it further. And, I've been seeing several things about on TikTok and a few other things. There's one particular gentleman, I don't remember his name, but he's taken like some of those Depression-era recipes made when times were really lean, like when people would, like, hey, we ain't got but a half a pound of meat and we got 7 people to feed. We're going to throw oatmeal in here and make this thing stretch. So it's interesting. Some of the things the guy makes, he made one the other day. It was just amazing to me. It was peanut butter pie, but it was it was just excuse me. It was peanut butter bread. It was bread, but it was just made out of peanut butter and flour and just very simple things. And it was interesting, but hey, they had to be invented back then.
Well, I guess where I'm really going with everything is exactly where you just went, talking about the Great Depression and what people had to do to survive. I mean, my dad, he grew up in Muskogee, Oklahoma. Well, actually, he kind of grew up everywhere. His dad was a road contractor in the 40s and 50s, especially after Eisenhower passed the highway bill and they started building the big national interstates. Well, he'd go do subcontracting work. Him and his brothers would subcontract building highways. That's how my family ended up here in Hamburgers, because they had been doing some highway work here in southeast Arkansas. And I think that they were working on this piece between Crossett and El Dorado originally when they first came into town back around 1959 or 60, something like that. It was back in those days. But, he was telling stories like when he was like 5 years old, his grandma, she was cooking some chicken on the potbelly wood stove, and everybody went bed at night, and then she woke up next morning and started asking the boys who ate her skunk, because she was boiling down the skunk to get the fat off of it to make a salad, but they thought they were eating chicken. So, and it's just interesting how people were resourceful in those days, But she was making salads for like if somebody burned themselves or if somebody had a chest cold, she could put some, menthol in there and rub it on their chest. That's what she was cooking down rendering the skunk is what they called that. But, ingenuity.
Wow.
Yeah, rendering the fat to use everything on the animal, because so it's being real oily and stuff, because the old saying about people settled in certain places during the Depression because that's where the cars broke down. They wasn't going anywhere; they was just going somewhere, and the car broke down. Well, this is where we're settling.
Yeah. Hey,
so you're right.
Hey,
go ahead.
All right. Real quick, since we're this close to Easter, I want to throw out an Easter egg. If you really want to see a very resourceful person and study their history, look up Ozzy the Iceman. Okay, back to your regularly reserved programming.
I'll check that out. But I mean, I guess that's kind of where I'm going at. I'm hearing a lot of people panicking and freaking out about, the economy and inflation and gas prices. I'm concerned too, but, the world keeps turning. At the end of the day, is it really about a dollar? Is it really about a paycheck? You got to survive, but you can also, there's these little tricks, that you can stretch your food out, make it go a little further. Maybe instead of having a whole bunch of meat, instead of having one big steak, you cut up some meat and throw it in a pot with some water and some onions and some carrots and some potatoes, and you make a big old stew that'll feed a half dozen, and ultimately I think if we're doing that and we're being resourceful, I think we can beat whatever kind of, none of us want to suffer, financially or, in a bad economy or anything, but I think that there's a sense of pride in being able to survive all of that and getting thrifty and, wise with your money and wise with, learning to do new things. We got some real fertile soul around here. Some people can save a few bucks by, just going and getting a couple of, bell pepper plants and a couple of tomato plants and finding some good spots in their yard and just digging them out and keeping them watered. You know, little bit of effort, no tools necessary, and you know you'll save some money that way. You know, probably. Oh, I mean, I'd say at least $20-$30. I mean, that's better than nothing. That's $30 for gas.
You know, since you went there, you know, of course, the reality of it is that as long as human beings are like a cooperative, if you're a group of people, like a family or a town even, you know, people don't go hungry. And I think that people may be overreacting. But on that topic, you've talked about this philosophy. And I've got bits and
Voluntaryism. Yeah.
Just take a minute. I mean, we're getting close. I mean, we got about 10 minutes.
Okay. Well, I'll go ahead and give you that. Voluntaryism is the philosophy that all human interactions should be voluntary. You shouldn't be forced to do something against your will. It shouldn't be done under duress or the threat of force or through manipulation, coercion, or fraud. In other words, if I have a truck I want to sell and you've got a boat you want to sell, but I want a truck and you need a boat, we should be able to just freely come up with some kind of idea between the two of us to figure out how we're going to meet to make that work. When you win, I win, we both win voluntarily. But, you know, if a third party comes into the picture and says, well, you know, we can't let you do that without a processing fee, you know, this unfair because one of them has wills and the other one doesn't have wills, then suddenly you got somebody else reaching in there, inserting themselves without being invited, mind you, into the process and gumming it all up and throwing things off. You know, and neither one of them really had a stake in the deal between the original two. So, I mean, just think of it in terms like that. Good ideas. Something that's a good idea that's like, wow, that sounds like something that would work, that make my life better, make my neighbor's life better. You don't need force to enforce that. Pretty much you need somebody with, you know, to use force against you, i.e. the rule of law or threats, intimidation, to produce bad ideas and to, you know, make them work. So that's kind of the whole idea behind it all. Good ideas, they don't need force, and you should be able to voluntarily. I mean, anything that you can do, you own your own body. You are not a steward of the state or the steward of a government because if a government has control of your body, then how's that different than slavery, right? I mean, honestly, you either own your body or somebody else does. There's the whole sense of ownership. You don't collectively belong to the city across it, do you? No. Does that mean that when you do something with your own two hands, if you go into your home and you make a sandwich, that everybody across it who has a claim to, well, you're a community member and without you, we can't function, therefore, you made that sandwich. You didn't make it just for yourself. You made it for all of us because you're part of the community. No, you made your sandwich. You can eat your sandwich. I'm breaking it down into the most simplistic terms here.
That's right, not socialism.
Well, especially that. I mean, that's the thing. It's about force of any kind. I mean, here's the thing. I can't take something that is morally wrong and pass a law to make it morally right. I can't say, well, murder is wrong, and then pass a law saying, well, it's okay if you murder someone on Thursdays in front of the courthouse with 6 witnesses present, then that's moral, right? You're still murder either way you look at it. It doesn't matter what kind of laws that man may apply to that scenario. At the end of the day, you can't take something that is immoral and make it moral by passing a law. Same thing goes the other way around. You can't take something that's moral and force it to be immoral. So, for example, would you say a man feeding his family by going fishing is an immoral act.
I wouldn't think
no.
No.
But if you get caught by the game warden, you can get fined for that. And the fine is a punishment. True. So that is making something that is immoral because you didn't have a special permit or whoever. And it's like, okay, I mean, now I get it. I hear all the time people say, well, you know, Arkansas Game and Fish Commission, they do an excellent job at managing our wildlife. And I hear it. I think that they do an excellent job as well. But it doesn't change the fundamental principle that you can't take something that's moral and make it immoral by a lawful degree. You know?
I have an immoral quip. This
Say again?
me, I have an immoral quip to add. This reminds me of fornicating under the consent of the king.
Yeah. I mean,
first night right?
Yeah, all of
first
that
night
stuff,
right.
You know? Like in the movie Braveheart, they discussed that. Yep.
Right, yeah, the rights of the king because he can choose to because he will bless the union with him.
Or any of the lords that own the land that the peasants lived upon. And they can say, well, we have a right to do that. No, that's still immoral. You know? You can't make something immoral moral, and you can't take something moral and make it immoral with the law. I mean, how are you going to tell somebody that feeding their family and working with their own two hands to achieve something, you know, I mean, now it'd be different if I jumped over somebody's fence, snuck onto their back pond, and I was actually fishing in someone's private pond because that's their property. We understand that property belongs to someone, and here I am sneaking up. Somebody else is maintaining the land. They're mowing it. They're keeping it clean. They're making sure no trees are growing up around it. They may be the ones who built the pond. They may be the ones who put the fish in the pond and was feeding the fish to grow the stock, right? So me jumping into somebody's private land and going and fishing, yeah, that would be that would definitely be probably something immoral. But if I just went down to a common fishing hole that everybody's free to fish at, why is it suddenly illegal? Why is it immoral for me to do something? And that's ultimately what law is. When you look at law is basically a degree of saying, well, this is what's moral and this is what's not moral. It's basically the state deciding what ethics are. Well, we have a thing called natural law. Natural law is where the Constitution derived all of the natural rights of man from. You know, that's how those things were derived, and you know, people, religious people say those rights are God-given, and other people look at it and say, well, that's natural law. So you have divine law, you have natural law. There's various degrees of looking at it, but ultimately, the thing is when you look at stuff like that, you have to look at it from perspective of what makes common sense. So, I mean, and it's rational when you realize, well, let me ask you this question. Do you believe people are born with a special right to rule and control other people?
I do not believe that. But I also believe, what I do believe, though, and I think this will kind of maybe emphasize the same point on the opposite side of it, but it still makes the same point and maybe expand upon it however you want to. But here's the deal. Like in that society, you talked about you couldn't come on someone else's property without permission. That means that person has some kind of a special talent or product that they carry to society. So you're still, I mean, what you're saying, some people may misinterpret what you're saying as like another weird thing, but it's not, because you're saying that everybody has their special land or their career and they bring it to the market.
It goes back to the fundamental of whether or not you own your own body or not, or does your body belong to someone else. So that by extension, if you look at the act of slavery, what is wrong with slavery? The number one thing we recognize as being wrong is that someone else, another person, is claiming they own the body of another individual. And they're also claiming that they own all of the product of that person's labor. In other words, 100% of that person's labor belongs to another person because they own that person. So the fundamental question you have to ask is this: if 100% of someone's labor is considered slavery, what is 30%? That's what you're taxed.
I guess that's
I mean,
you're taxed, but now you also got to consider
does the state own 30% of your body? Does the state own 30% of you?
No, but now I think we also live in a civilized society where a lot of these morals can change depending on who's the flavor of the week. I mean, the morals we have today are not the morals of the 1950s. That don't mean that they've changed any, but the acceptance of what was considered moral at different times has changed. The people of Nazi Germany thought it was moral to prosecute or, do the Jews. I mean, kill the Jews. They thought that was a moral imperative because they were told that and they believed it. Now, we think it's immoral, and probably most common people of a civilization would think it was more immoral as well. But a lot of the morals do change depending on the situation, But I understand the moral you're actually referring to, though.
Well, with philosophy, what you do is you start at a most fundamental, basic principle. And that principle is do you have a right of self-ownership? The thing is, if you have a right of self-ownership, then you have to recognize that if I own myself and I own my body, then I can actually own things. So, for example, I can actually go to work for someone, sell them my labor, and say, listen, I will sell you 1 hour of my time for $10. In exchange, you're going to give me $10 that I can use to go buy myself some food. So,
so now you're talking bartering. See, now you're talking bartering.
Well, that's voluntary.
You're bartering. Right. You are bartering with this guy voluntarily to offer up some of your time in exchange for services. You are bartering your time for a service. The key being,
your time is equivalent to your labor, right? Your time is your labor. Right.
It is, now, but if you were talking about the morals of it, and the morals of it is decided by the society, is what I'm trying to say. Is at one point in society, at one point, it was morally okay to have slaves. That don't mean it was right, but I'm just saying. No. The morals of the time.
Okay, now the thing is what we're talking about is there's a difference between what is accepted and what is moral. Okay,
it was accepted for a long time. They sold them for a long time.
Slavery might have been accepted, but it was never moral. It was never a moral principle.
And I agree with you, but what I'm talking about is during that time, it was a more accepted.
But you have to ask yourself what existed that allowed slavery to occur to be accepted by society.
Hey, I know
lack of civilization.
I know the answer.
Lack of civilization.
Money.
No. It was somebody claiming the right to own and control other people.
That's right. It was about money. They wanted to do it money.
I recognize that I cannot look over at my neighbor and say, I'm going to hold him against his will, force him to work in my field and produce money. I recognize that. And that's the thing. If you look at these societies where they enabled slavery, a Roman citizen was not allowed to enslave another Roman citizen. They were only allowed to slave people who were non-citizens. So see, there was conditions based upon it. They recognized another person's individual right to be free. But they chose as a society to ignore that right or to suspend that right to take something that didn't belong to them. And it was all sanctioned and approved by the state.
Right, which means society, the current people in control, the elected, however officials, they didn't elect them as such like we do, but the people in power had those morals. And they passed those morals around, and the people that had the power, just like the state, like you're talking about, that can tax that 30%, decided that it was morally right to do it, even if it's not moral.
No, it's not morally right to do it. It's
money. It's all about money, guys, because those politicians are being influenced by money. And hey,
Here's the thing: if 1,000 people agree that slavery is moral, that doesn't change whether it's moral or not. I'm going to leave you with that. A million people can agree that it's okay to sacrifice babies, and it will still never be moral.
I agree. Hey, this is a great place to end part one, and I love the way that ended too, guys. I appreciate your time so very much.
Hey, Donald, it's great talking to you.
That was fun.
Man, no problem.
That was fun, man. That was fun.
I appreciate you, Brad.
Hey, I appreciate you because that was a great dialogue, man. I appreciate you guys so much. Happy Tuesday. Is it Tuesday?
Yes.
It is Tuesday.
Yes.
Happy Tuesday to you guys.
Yes.
Be safe out there.
All right.
I'll take care.
Bye. All right. Bye-bye.